Hello, my name is Daniel Garcia with the Breeze Home 5.0 agent team. In this video, we'll be going over a few Linux basics you might find useful while developing on the Breeze Home project. So we'll start here at a prompt for an Ubuntu VM. This is sometimes called the terminal, the command line, the prompt, the shell, the console, or a TTY. Now these strictly don't mean the same thing, but they're often used interchangeably, so you should know that. And then we'll start with probably the most important command, and that's going to be man. And so man accepts an argument, which is a command. And it's going to show you the manual page. That's the name for that command. So for example, man, and we'll see the manual page for man. And we can see a few things here. Under the synopsis, it's going to tell you some different examples on how to use this. And so when you see something in these square brackets here, that means that that's going to be optional, right? Whereas something like here in this term, this is going to be required if you're using, in this case, man -k. And so you can use the arrow keys to go up and down and read through the manual page, and this is usually the best place to start when there's a command you don't understand. And you can just hit Q to exit that. So another thing we're going to want to do is clear the screen. So we can type clear and that'll do that. However, there's a more convenient way to do that. Just hit Control L and that'll clear the screen. To find out where we are, we're going to use pwd, so another very common command, and that's going to stands for print working directory, and that's going to tell us what directory we're in right now. Another common command is ls, and that's going to tell us what's in the directory that we're in now. And so if we man ls, we can see the manual page for ls. See it takes several optional options, and then optional file. If you don't pass it a file, it'll just use the current directory. And you'll notice that several of these have a short and a long version. So it's usually a good practice in a script or anything that you're not typing yourself at the terminal to use the longer version if they're available. It's just going to make your script, for example, more readable and more maintainable later. Again, Q to exit. So another common thing to do on the command line is to create a shortcut for commands that you're going to do often. So these are called aliases. So for example, a common alias it would be, let's say this ls here, ls-l8. So if we were to type alias, we'll call it ll equals, and we'll just put that in quotes, type enter. Now we can just type ll, and that'll give us, it'll run that command. And if I type which ll, we'll see that, and so you're gonna have to make this alias every time. If you want that to persist, you're gonna have to add that to your profile. Won't go into that here, but you can Google that. Control L will clear the screen. PS is another common command that's gonna show you what processes are running, and that too has a bunch of different arguments. Again, just go to man ps to view those. And one of the things you're going to want to do is install packages. So there's a few different ways to install packages. If you're coming from Windows and you're used to going and downloading an executable to install, this will be a bit different. Linux uses a package manager, or most distros do anyway. And so for example, to search for packages, we'll just type apt cache search and a package we'd like to search for. So in this case, I'll search for Emacs, and we'll get a pretty big list of results here. And so one of the things we can do to use this is we'll use a pipe, and then we'll type less. And with this pipe character, this vertical line, it's usually above the enter. What this does is it's going to take the output of the command on the left of the pipe and use it as the input to the command on the right. So this command on the right, less, is what's called a pager. And so when you pass it as its input, some text that's larger than the number of rows in the terminal, it'll page it. So you can use the arrow keys. And in fact, this is the same pager that is being used when we type man. So again, we can use the arrow keys to go up and down and look through this list. We can use / to search. And you can see everywhere that says Emacs here. And we'll just hit Q to exit. So if I wanted to, for example, install a package, we could do apt-get install, and I'll install htop. And you'll see that we'll get a permission issue because we're not root, so we're just going to use sudo, and that'll give us the right permissions to run the command. Another tip is, instead of rewriting the whole command, if you're in a situation like this where you need to run the previously run command as sudo, you can just use sudo ! And when I hit enter, you'll see that it was actually run with sudo apt-get install. So this ! Is just going to be your last command. See? So in this case, htop is actually already installed. But another thing you should be aware of is there's also apt. So apt is a little newer than apt-get. The command line interface isn't as stable, but you should probably get used to using it, at least know that it's there. And there's also aptitude. So just be aware of those three: apt-get, aptitude, and apt. They all install packages. They sound very similar, but they're all three different things. So you should be aware of that. Why don't we open up htop? And so this is htop, and you can see it's a bit of a different interface than we've seen before. And this is showing all the processes in the machine. You can see there's some metrics here at the top, and a bunch of a legend here at the bottom for some different keys. So that's pretty useful. There's also top, which is kind of the traditional version of this. I like htop, so I'd say definitely use it. So if we type ls here, we're going to see the shared directory, but there's actually more in here. So if we were to man ls and look through a bunch of these arguments, we might decide to do something like this. And so we'll go over what each of these do now, but when I print, you see we're getting a much more output here now. So the first thing we did was this -a, and this is going to show us hidden files or directories. So those are files or directories whose names begin with a period, as well as this ... and this dot. And these are used for relative links. So the ... is the parent directory, whatever directory we're in, its parent, and the dot is this current directory. So using the ... and the dot in a path, we can reference the current or the parent directory. The L is giving us this long output, where we're seeing a bunch of information here, and then the H is giving us a human readable output, and that has to do with the size here. So let's go from right to left here. We see the name of the file. This is the last modified. Our size, which would normally be in bytes, but because we have to have that H, it's going to be the human readable. Kilobytes or megs or gigs, whatever it is. Then this is the group and the owner of the file. This is the number of links or directories inside this directory or file. And then we have these 10 characters here. And so the first one is going to have to do with the file type. So for example, a D is a directory, L is a link, and then these 9 after the first one there are going to be the permissions. And so that's going to be what can the owner do. It's a triplet of 3. So we have the first 3 is what can the owner do, what can the group do, and what can other users do. And so each of these will be an R, a W, an X, an R, a W, an X, an R, a W, an X. If you see an R or a W, an X in a spot, it means that they have that permission. If you see a hyphen, it means they don't. So R means read, W means write, and X means execute. So for example, this is a directory where the owner vagrant has read, write, and execute permissions. The group vagrant has no permissions, and the all other users have no permissions. Here we can see the owner has read and write, while the group and all other users only have read. And so that's the basics of permissions. If you want to execute a file, you're gonna have to set that. That permission, and to do that, you can use a chmod. So if you just man chmod, you can read through that, and it'll tell you how to change permission. There's also chown if you want to change ownership. Thank you for watching. I've been Daniel Garcia with the Breeze Home 5.0 agent team. You can reach me at djarc287@fiu.edu. You can reach the product owner, Dr. Masood Sajadi, at sajadi@cs.fiu.edu.